We are looking at Overhand Follow Through by J. Wilburn. There is nothing else on this page because this story has to be written from scratch. So I'm going to do my best to tell you a story. Let's see what we can do with this. Cobb Jolson wasn't the oldest man in his neighborhood. When this week began, but he was on his way. His wife, Piper, had just turned 80, and he was almost 9 years older than her. All right. "15 Fairfax Circle." Okay, I might do a new paragraph with that. It's weird to start a paragraph with a number, but that's all right. 15 Fairfax Circle, a dead end. No, that's not a fun way to say it. Cul-de-sac. All right, a cul-de-sac with fewer than 15 houses on it was their retirement home. It was too much house and too much yard for the two of them, even when kids or grandkids visited. But he hadn't worked his way up in life to have to wait on any bathrooms or to wonder where things should go. He had no need. I think a lot of this is going to go. I don't need all this description in here, but I'm going to go ahead and finish it up anyway. He had no need for an office, but there was a perfect place for it. So he had one. He had a media room with fine black recliners set up theater style, but he mostly watched TV in bed. Okay. Until the zombies rose earlier that week, and the power went out for good. No more TV in bed or in that pitch black media room, and he might be the oldest man. Well, let's say he might have been. He might have been the oldest man in the state by the time he was forced out of the side door of his garage onto a small square of concrete pad. All right. Kedman is here. Hey, Jay, got 2 posts delivered to me today. One is Marcus Olson's 3rd book in the trilogy, and the other is The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. Very good, man. You are a reader. You even travel to pick up books sometimes. That's an old concept in the new world these days. All right. So he was forced out on the square pad of concrete. Cobb forced the door closed behind him, and when he felt it latch, he took a moment to catch his breath. That moment also allowed him to realize he was outside and exposed. All right. Did you go and resurrect Waldo? No, not yet. Not yet. We'll see. If the book blows up, we might have to do something with him. I mean, money really decides how many sequels something deserves. Oh, this is a zombie story though. So we gotta, I guess by what I've written here, he's about 89 years old. That moment also allowed him to realize he was outside and exposed to the creatures eating people alive. So much for all that square footage. He could probably get back in through the porch, through the screen porch, and separate sunroom if he remembered where the spare key was. Going back inside might be a terrible idea. The air stunk of carbon smoke. It was like the forest fires last summer, where that nose burning odor permeated the air for weeks. These fires he could see though. Black smoke billowed up beyond the forests in the direction of town. Alright, Tom, delivery men instead of zombies. It's just hordes of delivery men trying to break into your house to get you to sign for packages. That's a golden idea. You shouldn't be giving that away for free. Kedman says, today I also went to a Specsavers to fix my problem to not be able to read pockets through my glasses. We'll get my new ones around the 13th of December. I think we're all getting there, man. I actually do need glasses, but mine got busted up sometime when my kids were little, and I just never got them renewed. So I get by. I don't drive for other reasons, medically related, but I'm definitely going to need to get glasses here probably before my license expires. Of course, if I'm not driving, I don't really need it. I can just get an ID, but you never know when something like that might come in handy. All right, black smoke billowed up behind the forest in the direction of town. 2 other blazes. were within sight of his side yard. The property values of, say, Cold Stream Heights subdivision were dropping fast. Okay. Buyer's market. He muttered, and then coughed on the acidic air. You guys are writing your own story there in the chat. All right. I think I like that one better. All right. Buyer's market. That needs to be a plural possessive. He muttered and then coughed on the acidic air. Cobb used his elbow to stifle the noise because, of course, he wasn't the oldest man for miles for no reason. Zombies. Those walking dead things that belonged in kids' comics and trashy horror nonsense wandered the roads, the manicured lawns, and the green spaces, no longer supported by HOA dues. All right. No matter where he moved in the world, the DHL delivery guy always found him to sign his deliveries, no matter if he was in the middle of the Amazonas jungles or traveled to the Arctic expedition. Oh, man. That's a good story, guys. You shouldn't be giving that away for free. You have to have several co-writers on that and get that out in the world before someone else snatches it up. It's good stuff. All right, the green spaces. At least that cost is off my plate. He said, muffled into the crook of his arm. His own lawn was in need of mowing and tending. Cobb prided himself on his yard space, even though he hadn't done any of the work for decades. Say any of the work himself for decades. All right. He had great succulents and palms. Let's say squat palms in a rock bed. A rock bed filled with bright white gray and tan riverstone. Riverstones that, okay. I gotta fix some stuff here. Alright, succulents, we got that. He had great succulents and squat palms in a rock bed filled with bright white, gray, and tan riverstones that were almost too smooth, round, and round, and perfect to be natural. They were, though. He'd paid plenty for that look. Let's say a flagpole. Missing its state and national flags. Stood bright and tall, exactly where the HOA approved. Okay. He had, of course, not ventured outside to raise those flags since all this started. I'm going to pull the flag stuff down. Alright, so that's going to be a new paragraph because I'm talking about the flag for a longer period of time. Since this all started, seeing Randall, what's his name, and his, what do HOA mean? Homeowners Association. They can also be a POA, Property Owners Association. But here in the United States, in like fancy neighborhoods, there'll be like a neighborhood covenant that everybody has to sign when they buy houses in that neighborhood, and they have to abide by various rules about what they do, and the associations approve what they can do to their lawns and their houses, what color the houses can be painted, all that kind of stuff. And supposedly the idea is to keep the neighborhood nice. They also have to pay dues, which typically pays for any amenities, like are there light posts on the street, are there green spaces, is there a swimming pool or a clubhouse, all that kind of stuff is covered in those dues. I do not want to live in a neighborhood like that. Wouldn't it be LOA and then Luxury Home Association? There you go. They are notorious. They are seen as notoriously un-American and are becoming very, very common in America. This idea that the group governing body of your neighborhood tells you what you can and can't do with your house. I think deep down what it is they just want to keep people from doing something they don't consider nice, but not actually having to talk to their own neighbors about it. Jay lives on an expensive gun club property. Yeah, my house is the neighborhood that's near me that kind of wraps my house on a few different sides. Is an HOA, but the house I live in was built before there was a neighborhood. It's near a golf course. I'm near a river, and then there's like hunting lands on the other side of the river, so you can hear guns going off and stuff. Armand visited me once when he was either picking me up or dropping me off from somewhere, as we ventured across the country, and he could hear all the gunshots going off. And of course, that's been going on so long around here that I don't even think about it anymore. It's just background noise at this point. At this point now, they're building a neighbor. I'm in a bunch of trees, and they're building a neighborhood like across the ravine, beyond me, just kind of like past the back corner of my house, which is set back in the trees. And so now construction noise is kind of my background noise. Is it more dangerous to be close to a golf club to get a ball in the head? I mean, yes. If you go into the neighborhood proper, we're kind of looked at as the woods people because we're back here in the trees and we don't have to abide by any rules. we're just uncivilized human beings. Beyond our house, like where the golf course is, some of the roads for the neighborhoods kind of weave in around the greens and stuff. So they actually have a lot of times like protective plastic built over the top of the windows so the golf balls will bounce off of them. But it's one of the things that people don't like. We are way off of that, so it's probably translating to the metric system, probably 50 meters from our house to the next street, and then the golf course is beyond that. And if the during the particular season, if I can see through the trees when all the leaves are off, we're kind of near like the 18th green. So like nobody's hitting a ball near us, and even if they did on purpose, they might not make it as far as we are. So no danger where we are then, not for us anyway. No. The only danger we have is the neighbors not talking to us, because we don't have to listen to any of their rules. We can put up whatever Christmas lights and decorations we want and all that kind of stuff. But fortunately for them, I'm pretty lazy. They didn't like it when my car started breaking down and we had to go through a long process to get all the paperwork done to get it junked. So there was like a junk car in my side yard back here in the trees, and they didn't really like that. Armand says I could hit your house with a driver on the ninth hole. Yeah, I doubt it. You might get close by accident if you were aiming at the hole. I made a hole in one, knowing that was just Jay's house. Yeah. There you go. So like if you stand at a particular place, it looks like I am living fancy. Like if you kind of come out of the woods a little bit and stand just right, it's like, oh man, Jay has really moved up in the world, instead of the fact that I just live in a small house back in the woods. But great internet, as you can probably tell, depending on how your reception is. And kind of this story, I'm sort of basing off that neighborhood in a little bit in my head. Some of the twists and turns of their streets. None of the street names are the same though. And his young wife, third or fourth. Cobb couldn't remember. Okay. Seeing Randall, what's his name, and his young wife, third or fourth, Cobb couldn't remember, getting torn apart in their quiet, I'll say in the middle, and in the middle of their quiet side street was enough to convince him to stick with indoor living for a while. But here he was. The street was still stained at the place of their deaths. She had gotten up again and wandered off. You stink at mini golf. That's another thing. My house is pretty close to the beach. Probably, I don't know if this counts as close, but like straight line, 10 miles to the Atlantic Ocean. It's a little bit longer when you have to hook around the roads and stuff. But it's a kind of a resort area, so there's like hundreds upon hundreds of mini golf places down there. They're not usually open during the winter, but they're everywhere. So we could do a new one every day and probably never have to repeat for almost a year. All right, the street was still stained at the place of their deaths. She had gotten up again and wandered away. Randall had not, but there was no sign of his remains now. Let's see. New paragraph. Cobb recognized some of the undead through their bloody masks of injuries. let's say, comma, people he was friendly with. People he was friendly with, but who he did not trust to be friendly now. Zombies, the ones in real life, anyway, seemed to always go for faces and necks. Every new recruit was an awful mess. He did his best to stifle another cough, but some of the closer monsters heard him and turned in his direction. More picked up on the movement and joined in on closing the distance. Alright. Cobb was closed out of his garage, but had to decide where he wanted to go from here. Almost on impulse. No real planning involved. He picked up one of the precious rounded river stones out of the immaculate bedding. Alright, Witchy Eyes must have the best cover I've seen in a long time. That's cool. Alright. All the ones you've shown on stream have been really awesome. I don't know if it just happens to be the books you're picking, or if there's some really great stuff being published out your way. Almost on impulse, no real planning involved. He picked up one of the precious rounded river stones out of the immaculate bedding. There weren't many kids in this neighborhood. There weren't many kids in this neighborhood. Probably only a couple. But Cobb put a lot of time into shooing. I do not know how to spell shooing when you're talking about moving someone away. Is it this? Shooing? Oh, I guess it's that. Alright. Alright, he spent a lot of time he put a lot of time into shooing them away from his rocks. A good round rock was awfully tempting to a young boy. An entire landscaping feature of them was probably, no, I keep saying that, of them had to be maddening. Cobb was far from boyhood, but he could recall that instinct just the same. All right. He bounced the bright white, okay. He bounced the bright white stone in his hard lined palm a couple times. This was a stupid plan. No plan at all, really. But he hurled the rock at the scattering of bodies heading toward him. All right. Cobb felt something give in his shoulder with a warning twinge of pain. Okay, hold on. No quotation. You aren't young anymore, you old fool, it said. The rock arced nicely. It spun with a deadly twirl. All right, let me put an extra D in deadly. This is that kind of story where we put all the letters in. All right, the rock arced nicely. It spun with a deadly twirl that any curveball pitcher would envy, he thought. It bounced off the closest zombie's shoulder. All right. Earlier this week, I went to the local bookshop and bought Vladimir Nabokov Lolita Siri, Patterson's Norse fantasy trilogy, and finally Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho. That's a good list of books, man. Your book budget must be one of your biggest monthly expenses. Not that I'm complaining. I do not discourage reading, of course. It's not in my best interest, even if somebody has a problem. All right, it bounced off the closest zombie's shoulder. Cobb would bet that shoulder was dislocated, at least. The sound of the impact was quite satisfying. But even this old fool knew he needed to aim for the head and do more than dislocate. He held his back as he took up 2 more hefty stones. All right. Not not that I buy books on the regular basis. So far, I often just waiting for a book fair before I bought books. That's a good idea. Could go a year between. But the last 2 years have been a book drought. So to say, no book fairs, no books I bought until now. Oh, that's right. With the pandemic and everything, everybody's kind of making up for some of that stuff. A lot of people, especially here in the U.S., kind of leaned into Amazon during that period where we were locked down. Of course, compliance with that kind of stuff probably isn't as high in the United States as it is in a number of other Western countries, although I'm sure there's been resistance to that stuff everywhere. But for a while, when everybody was locked down, Amazon stayed busy. But now most people are back to normal. A lot of people were back to normal long before they were supposed to be, but that's how it goes. I'm looking forward to getting back to conventions. Hadn't done any for years. I planned one last summer and then canceled it because there was such a spike in cases leading up to it. Probably would have been fine if I went, but in my situation, being immunosuppressed, I couldn't take the kind of risks or gambles that more healthy people could. I got one scheduled for April coming up, so hopefully things will be died down to the point to where it's safe and reasonable for me to go, but I'm still not opposed to canceling that or any of the others I got planned for next year if it turns out to be bad. And MondoCon, yes, that's coming up in May, so I'm looking forward to that as well. Got many things going between now and then, but I'm looking forward to that very much. All right, good company, of course. I don't really care how much writing I get done, but I'll do it anyway. MondoCon is Armand Rosamelia's own sort of mini writer's retreat. A lot of us stay at his house. I didn't go last year, of course, because I had to be a little more careful even at that point. That happened around the same time as the convention I had to cancel. But it's sort of like a mini private writer's retreat. It's kind of limited in space because of the size of their house or whatever. So it's not like a convention center convention, but sort of just get the group together and encourage each other to write. Too far for me to go. Probably. It's it'd be a long trek for a weekend for sure. There's a lot of great conventions in the United States if you ever wanted to pop over, but that would not be a cheap vacation for sure. All right, he held his back as he took up 2 more hefty stones. He connected with, let's say as the zombies mounted the curb and crossed his lawn, he connected with heads this time. One skull cracked for sure, and he crushed another nose into nothing. But he put none of the monsters down. No good. As he bent down to arm up in both hands again, he planned to make his way around the house and use the rocks as bludgeons. And make his way around the house and use the rocks as bludgeons if any of them got a hold of him. Cobb still had some bulk and strength even at this age, but he had personally seen groups of these things take down younger and fitter men than him. Let's say, as he stood up straight, comma, let's check with chat. My next real planned trip is Sweden Rock, beginning in June next year. Guns N' Roses, finally got to see them. That's cool. Wonder if I should organize a Kedman Con. There you go. There's got to be writers around. Don't wonder, Mr. Frank says. Execute. That is Frank Edler, marvelous writer of weird and humorous fiction. Oh, snap. Check out my crown. Good job, buddy. That's good stuff. Oh, with Prime Gaming. Thank you, sir. I like that. I would redeem to highlight his message, Mr. Frank in the house. I can't squeeze you all into it. That's fine. Think local. Start local, Kedman. You can find a few other aspiring authors around your area. Frank, you better have a crown when you get on my Twitch again. Oh, we may have divided. We may have divided the friendship there. But thank you, Mr. Frank, for subbing with Gaming Prime. I appreciate that very much. I definitely need that money more than Armand. He's a kept man. But if you're going to have 2 subscriptions, you can't go wrong with... I know I missed your Twitch today, Mr. Frank said. It was a good one, too. We got to talk about delivery men, and he was writing an interesting story. And Fishhead, thank you very much. And shared some personal things about how he's feeling today. It was a very nice stream. It was cool to be there to see it. I saw as much as I could. I got family in town, so my mom is here. So I had to help her with laundry and then help her with a few other things, and then I have to hang out with her too. No reason to keep her here and not keep her company, of course. All right. As he stood up straight, he stared at the backs of his attackers, retreating into the street. Not that he was complaining. Not that he was complaining, but he didn't get it. All right. I saw it was about bears. Now I gotta see if they explode or not. It was bars. It was 2 bars by the maple tree. Of course, it sounds like for marketing purposes, it might be good for Armand to keep it as bears. Just rename it. Is that Bob Ross? What better compliment is there than a Bob Ross emote? All right. Some commotion and the ongoing lack of a plan kept Cobb planted on that little island of concrete with a rock in each hand, and eyes fixed on the wandering dead. All right, Kedman. In the late 90s, I listened to a hamster dance page on repeat for 4 hours. Pretty lightheaded after that. Some people experiment with hallucinogens. You got all your hallucinating from a dancing hamster site. So probably you had the worst end of it there. All right, in each hand, eyes fixed on the wandering dead. It wasn't long before the 2 bicycles zipped through one of the boys pointed at the lawn, and they both hopped the curb and tore through the grass at Cobb. Okay. It's cheap after. There you go. The problem with vices is the cost. If you can find a nice cheap vice, that's the way to go. That's the economic way to do that sort of thing. All right. It wasn't long before the two bicycles zipped through. One of the boys pointed at the lawn, and they both hopped the curb and tore through the grass at Cobb. Say stepping off with the bikes still rolling. The front wheels bounced off the siding and fell over on the edge of Cobb's rocks. All right, let's say Nolan Hemphill said, Nolan Hemphill said, "Sorry about your lawn, Mr. Jolson." The other boy Jordan Merrifield. The other boy, Jordan Merrifield, let me put commas around his name, added, "and the house. We were hosting you now." Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Kedman. I appreciate that. "And the house. We were in a hurry. The zombies and all." Cobb wondered how much an a-hole. I'm going to actually write that instead of the actual cuss word this time, just because I think the tone of the story might work with that. Cobb wondered how much of an a-hole he had been that two boys fleeing a horde of zombies still felt they needed to apologize for riding on the lawn. Cobb was far more concerned about the mob of creatures coming after them, and him again. Don't worry about it. Can you two throw? Let's say Nolan and what's this other kid's name? Jordan accepted the rocks from Cobb's hands like they were being given some great honor. This was still a stupid plan, but Cobb was starting to think he might be in shock. boys turned and hurled their stones. Say one stuck in a zombie's eye and staggered it. The creature regained its balance and kept coming. Alright. The other stone split a young woman, let's say a young undead woman's head. Let's say scalp. Right down the middle. And she twisted as she folded to the ground. Alright. Nolan cheered as Jordan groaned. You have to aim, Nolan said. You have to aim, Nolan said. Alright. Jordan held out his hands. I hit it in the head. Well, hit it harder. Nolan then looked up at Cobb. All right, I need to say how old these boys are, but I may just put that in the editing. I don't think I'm going to put it in here now. Well, hit it harder, okay? All right. Nolan then looked up at Cobb. Can we get more rocks? Cobb glanced at the corner of his porch behind the house, and then at the closed door behind him. He had no good options with more of those things coming. Yes, please, boys, knock yourselves out. All right. Yes, please, boys, knock yourselves out. Let's say Nolan passed a rock to his friend. We should knock them out instead. Hand me one, too, son. Make it a good one. Alright. Both the boys dropped a zombie each on Cobb's unkempt grass. His throw went wide, and his shoulder gave him another stinging warning of his age. All right. Try again. Mr. Jolson. Nolan passed out stones for another volley. All right. Call me Cobb. It only seems fair with us fighting side by side, and he eyed the creatures closing in. If they get too close, if they get too close, you boys get on your bikes and circle around the house to get away. Take the trail to the lake back there, and then keep going wherever you can. Nolan was still paying attention. As Jordan downed a large undead man in some sort of uniform, spoiled by old blood. He took up another stone on his own. Less talking, more braining, soldiers. Nolan took one out too and rearmed himself. Let's say Cobb considered his options. His shoulder did not have great range of motion. The boys seemed to be following some sort of sport training or primal instinct in their overhand throws. Cobb remembered skipping stones over water. He still did that on rare occasion on that lake back through the woods on days cool enough to not have mosquitoes. He wasn't, let's say, okay, I'm going to make a new paragraph there. Alright. He wasn't sure it would work. but he flicked one sidearm and it curved right into the brow of an older undead woman, probably from this neighborhood. With a lot of exposed skull showing through her skin. Okay, let me spell a few things correctly here. Showing through her torn skin. The stone blasted through the head and kept going. It tore off the side of another zombie behind the first, and they both went down. Nolan passed another stone to Cobb. That was awesome. Double, Jordan added. Can you teach us how to do that? You're doing fine, boys. Don't change horses midstream. What? Just stick with what's already working for you. They continued their defensive assault from Cobb's side yard. The boys did try a couple sidearm throws, let's say sidearm flicks. The stones tore up the undead, but usually they missed that way. They missed the heads. They each stuck with their prime techniques. The yard filled with bodies that stunk that stunk too terribly for the smoke to cover anymore. The ones flowing in from the street started to thin out, and the field of downed zombies slowed their progress across the lawn. The trio of unlikely warriors Missed. Is that how you spell warriors? Huh. Weird. Okay. It just doesn't look right to me. Alright, the trio of unlikely warriors missed a few times, but not often. With the slower progress and wider spread of approaching trouble, they were, let's say, approaching trouble, spell that correctly. Alright. With the slower progress and wider spread of approaching trouble, they were, I need to put a comma there. They were able to alternate throws, rest, and take careful aim each time. Nolan Nolan juggled 2 stones from hand to hand as he waited his turn. He waited his next turn. Mr. Jolson Cobb, what are you planning to do? The old man glanced at the door behind him. Okay, the old man glanced at the door behind him and said, I was thinking of running for it, but I don't know where. I think I can take care of a problem inside that gave me trouble this afternoon. Then I can stay here a while longer, I guess. I have a good bit of non-perishable. I have a good bit of non-perishable food. Alright, so let's see. If he were nearly 90, then he would have kind of grown up in the 30s, so he would have been in the Great Depression. I have a good bit of non-perishable food. Keeping extra supplies on hand is an old habit from my mother and my youth. Okay. Cobb paused to make his throw. It was a little further than he usually tried, but he'd rather take an extra throw than to let them get any closer. The creature's skull and brains blasted apart in dozens of pieces. Alright. Creature's skull and brains blasted apart in dozens of pieces from the direct hit to the temple. He started to suspect that zombies attacking the heads of their victims was weakening their skulls somehow. Nolan used one of his stones to take one down, still well into the street. They were all getting good at this. All right. Cobb asked, where are your families? I'll say both kids looked to each other and then away as they rearmed themselves. And Cobb, that seemed answer enough. Alright, both kids looked to each other and then away as they rearmed themselves, and Cobb, that seemed answer enough. But Nolan spoke anyway. It was bad. My dad tried to go for help and more supplies, but he got overwhelmed, and my uncle tried to help. My folks tried too, Jordan said. My mom. Okay. In that pause, Cobb considered that it was probably his job to put an arm around the boy, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. This was an era where you kept away from other people's kids. Nolan gathered himself and spoke over a grunt as he opened another zombie's head. Head some distance away. It wasn't his turn. Neither of them said anything about it. My mom is the only reason we got to our bikes and away. Jordan took an extra turn. Ridding the world of one more zombie. Okay. We tried to get out of the neighborhood. But we just kept drawing them in. You guys can stay here once I clean up something inside. Maybe we can come up with a plan together after something to eat and a little rest. The boys exchanged another look and nodded their acceptance. Maybe we finish off these last few, Jordan suggested, and then they might not figure out we're inside. All right. Just then, a golf cart buzzed around the corner. And ran up in Cobb's drive. Let's see. Lydia Quirk in her mid-70s behind the wheel called out. You got a charger we can use. Cobb glanced over his shoulder. In the garage, but I can't get to it just yet. Say Daisy Lockridge next to, I need to spell Cobb correctly. Daisy Lockridge next to, what did I name this woman? Lydia. Pushing 80. Said, sorry for the trouble, but we have some friends behind us. As if on cue, the shoulder to shoulder pack zombies moaned into view. The trio took up their rocks and started unloading before any of the monsters reached the grass. It was hard to miss with so many of them together. Cobb broke a sweat and took deep breaths as he pressed on with the mission. He didn't even notice the two ladies joining in until their stones started taking the undead heads right off their shoulders. How? Nolan asked with more awe than he had shown Cobb's sidearm technique. Cobb was impressed too. Daisy went on decapitating the creatures one at a time as Lydia laughed and said, I was going to say softball, but that would be an underhand throw. Daisy went on decapitating the creatures one at a time as Lydia said, I need to come up with a name of something. Let's just say baseball for now. No, let's say rec ball. So that'll just be non-specific there. That's amazing, Jordan said as he split another head just on the edge of the lawn. Overhand and follow through, Daisy said. They even took time to show the boys what they meant. Neither of the younger men took off a head, but they added more power and accuracy. The dead thinned, and then petered out to quiet. Fires in sight had burned themselves down to blistered boards and cinders. Cobb held his knees and waited for his heart to catch back up. Daisy reached for the knob behind Cobb. He didn't even move to stop her. I think it's locked. We'll need to go around, and I'll have to find where I hid the key from myself. The knob did turn, though. The knob did turn, though, and the door burst open as a figure plunged through and slammed into Cobb's back. He let out a strangled cry as he tried to twist away. He ended up on his back with the undead woman on him, snapping her teeth. All right. Doop. Lydia let out a breathless word. Piper? Cobb held his wife's teeth, still all her own, unfortunately. Cobb held his wife's teeth, still all her own, unfortunately, away from his face. But his arms shook from the day's rock throwing. Let's say the boys wrestled her off sideways and pinned her to the ruined grass beside Cobb. Let's say Nolan lifted a rock over his head and hers. Mr. Jolson, we have to. Okay? Cobb nodded, but then said, I should do it. He struggled to get to his feet again as the boys held down Piper. Okay. Then, before he could gain his feet, she broke free of their grasp. He reached for them to pull the boys away instead of going for her or protecting himself. Let's say 2 stones whistled through the air. 2 stones whistled through the air and connected with a sharp clack inside his wife's brains. Her head and face lost their shape. He was thankful. He was thankful she landed face down after it was over. Lydia said, I'm very sorry, Cobb. No, thank you. No. He shook his head and turned away. Thank you. I should have handled it myself, but it was just a scratch. I didn't even know if it was from one of them. I just waited too long. And then got caught out here with all of them. Not your fault, Daisy said. Yeah, we're all doing the best we can, Nolan added. Cobb swallowed a few times on a dry throat. Well, everyone come in. We can clean up, eat, and rest. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going, Lydia said. If we can get that charger. It's getting late. Cobb made a point of looking to the sky. There are people we need to check on, Daisy said. They did all take tea. And clean up inside as the charger worked on the cart outside. Everyone went out together and stood near the rocks until they knew it was clear. Cobb let the ladies keep the charger. And they promised to come back if they found help. Cobb thanked them, but doubted he'd ever see them again. The boys stayed with him a while. He worked on their bikes a bit and found them comfortable places to sleep. In the end, they did come up with a plan. It was a shame they couldn't bring the great throwing rocks with them, but they did set out together. All right. I want to figure out how to end this story right here. In the end, they did come up with a plan. It was a shame they couldn't bring the great throwing rocks with them, but they did set out together. Let's see. And they did quite well for themselves, all things considered. All right.